Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining our Grandstream UCM webinar with 888 VoIP. Today we have Ernesto Calderon from Grandstream. He's a support manager, and he is going to be going over the UCM solutions and how the UCM platform works across the product line. So I'm going to hand it over to Ernesto. Also, if you have any questions throughout, we're going to be taking questions at the end. However, on your dashboard, there is a questions tab. Please type in any questions you have, and then we'll go ahead and we'll answer those at the conclusion of our webinar. So I'm going to hand it over to Ernesto.
Thank you, Danielle. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ernesto Calderon here at Grandstream Networks. And today we're going to be talking about our IP PBX, the UCM 6200 series, as well as the 6510, which is a very similar PBX with some minor differences, but I'm going to go over that today. So as Danielle mentioned, you have a dashboard, a question section on your dashboard at the bottom. So feel free to submit any questions. But again, at the end of the presentation, we're going to go over those questions. So let me get started. So let me give you a brief introduction of Grandstream Networks. As you may know already, Grandstream has been in the market for 15 years already. And as of today, we make or manufacture all the products that you can see right now, from video phones, enterprise IP phones, small to medium businesses, IP phones, even DEC phones, and our IP PBX 6200 series, as well as IP surveillance. ATAs, very important. We make ATAs from 1 FXS port all the way up to 48 FXS ports. And lastly, but not least, we launched last year our network solution product or network line. So we have access point in different models: small access point, large access point, long range access point, as well as routers. So keep an eye on our website. Eventually, Grandstream is going to be launching new network products. So check on 888's website or even Grandstream website. Now let's get started. Our UCM 6200 series comes in two different models: a small appliance version and a large or rack mountable version. So the small appliance, it comes in two models: the UCM 6202 and the 6204. The large rack mountable version, it's the UCM 6208. So basically, the only difference in its peripherals are the FXO ports. Obviously, a 6202 comes with 2 FXO ports. 6204 comes with 4 FXO ports, and of course, the 6208 comes with 8 FXO ports. Other than that, all the features are the same. All the appliances, they share the same firmware version. They have the same. They support the same call features, the same call settings. Everything is working as one appliance. In addition, any of these three models, all of them, they come with 2 FXS ports. So you can connect, for example, a fax machine, an analog phone, just in case you don't want to invest in an IP phone right next to the PBX, where the PBX is installed in. For example, in your telco room, you may not need an IP phone there, but you can just grab an analog phone and connect it into the PBX so you can make and receive calls. Now, with these models, you can accomplish up to 100 concurrent calls and up to 32 conference attendees. I'm going to break it down a little bit more later so you can understand what model can accomplish what. But in general, yes, 100 concurrent calls. So you can have up to 800 SIP endpoints or SIP extensions. And any model supports up to 50 SIP trunks, basically. And all of them, they come with the 2 dual gigabit network ports, integrated PoE, USB, and SD ports. PoE is so you can power on the device. So you can connect these PBXs into your PoE switch so you can save in power supply. Last but not least, zero configuration, or what we call plug and play. Grandstream has developed a lot of features. So to make it easier for our customers to connect their phones and be ready and provision with an extension. Super easy. Basically, you connect your phone, go to the UCM, go to the zero config menu, and then you can start assigning extensions manually. It supports other modes of zero config that you can even let the PBX out of provision the extensions for you. It's very touchless. You don't need to do anything. Just enable that option, go to the cubicles or office, connect the phones, and they will be provisioned with an extension automatically. Now, this is kind of the differences in between the different hardwares, as I mentioned before, so you can see it in the back of the unit. The main difference, as I mentioned before, is the FXO ports. Other than that, everything is the same. The SD card and the USB port can be used for storage. In this storage, you can save or push your voicemails, your call recordings, the configuration or backup itself, and multiple other media that a typical PBX is handling. So you have options that you can configure the UCM, so then you can push this data either to a local storage on the UCM itself, through the external media, USB or SD card, or even through a third-party server like an SFTP server. Now, this UCM 6208, as you can see, is a rack mountable. It's a 1U unit that you can install in any rack. Because of that, you have a display in the front that you can gain basic information of the UCM, as, for example, what type of what is the IP address of the unit, so you can remote access it, so you can see, you can reboot the unit, basic commands that you can do through the LCD screen. Now, our UCM is built on top of Asterix 13, version 13. It's an open source PBX. However, we preferred to configure the unit by using the web interface. So you need to access the UCM through a browser and configure the unit through the browser. As an Asterix PBX, you don't have an option that you can remote access typical, command line that it will let you make the proper changes through a command line environment. We don't have that option. We prefer that everything is done through the web browser. Some of the other features that our PBX supports are a wizard, an automatic wizard. As soon as you log into the web browser, there's going to be a wizard, 5-6 steps. You follow that, and then at the end, you click submit, and the UCM is going to be ready to use. Meaning that through the wizard, you can configure time, for example, you can configure extensions, ranges, you can configure just trunks, analog trunks or zip trunks, and different other settings that will let you have a full phone system ready at the end of the wizard. And other typical features, announcement center, multiple devices per SIP account. That's a new option that by having one extension, then you can have multiple phones registered with the same extension. So typical example is that you have your extension at your office, and then you have a phone at work, at home, sorry, and then you may have your cell phone, which is using an app, a cell phone. Then you can have these 3 phones register simultaneously with a unique extension. All the features that the UCM comes with is a conference call scheduler, inbound and outbound multiple mode, or inbound and outbound call routing. So that's a very obvious feature that a PBX must support. Video preview, fax sending via the web interface. That's a new option that we added not too long ago. Basically, besides receiving the faxes through an external number, You can also pop up your browser, log in as the user with a user credential, meaning your extension number and a password. And then from your portal, you can upload a PDF file, enter a phone number, and send it. Of course, you can gain CDRs and multiple other features. Now, the UCM 6510, this is a very similar device than the 6208. It's a rack mountable unit, but this one comes with one T1. It's a E1 T1 or even a J1 network port that you can connect your PRIs to gain more lines. With this large appliance, you can have up to 2,000 extensions, and the concurrent calls, you can increase it up to 200. So this is one of the benefits of the UCM 6510. Other than that, it also shares the same firmware, the same call features, the same configuration. Everything is exactly the same as the other two models that I showed you before. Now, let me show you a little bit about the web interface. This is how it looks like. It's so nice, so easy. Everything is in one dashboard. From the dashboard main page, you can see everything in one shot. You can see, for example, the CPU and memory usage. You can see the status of your peripherals, USB port, for example, SD card. And most important, at the bottom, you can see the extension status, how many extensions you have registered, how many extensions are not registered, how many calls are active, and things like that. In the next menu, you can see the interfaces, status, with colors. So basically, blue is connected, gray is not connected. So you can see the status of your SD card, LAN port, LAN PoE, or you name it, any physical peripheral of the device, you can see that in the dashboard. All right, next one is, this is what I told you before, the zero config. This is a nice option that the UCM supports. Basically, you can provision your phones in a couple clicks in a brand new installation. Just install or connect your UCM, go to the office, plug in your phones, go to the UCM again, and start assigning extensions to each phone. You're gonna see the phones popping up like you can see in this screenshot, and then you can assign manually the extensions of your choice. As I said before, there's another setting that you can turn on so the UCM can automatically assign the extensions for you. This is more a transparent or more like a plug and play option. Inbound and outbound. So this is an inbound. This is the menu for an inbound route. Obviously, what to do with those incoming calls, right? Incoming calls through your analog trunks, incoming call through your SIP trunk, for example. What to do with them? Either play an IVR or transfer the calls automatically to an extension, or you can switch between modes. And destination doesn't have to be done through the web interface. So we have an option that we call it day and night mode, that let's say that you have your incoming route configured to go to an IVR, let's say office hours IVR, right? Welcome to company ABC. Press this for sale, press option for another route. So if after hours you have employees staying in the office, then they don't need to reach out to the administrator, so they can extend or expand the IVR hours. Instead of that, you can set up a button, start code button, that the employees can have. By dialing that, they can switch the IVRs back to the same office hours IVR. And then at the end, they can turn it off. So the IVR goes back to the off hours IVR. I mentioned about the multiple registrations. So with Asterisk 13, our UCM gained an option that you can register, as I said, as you can see here, a soft phone, for example, your deck phone that you may have home, and another desktop phone that you may have at work, and even a home extension. So you can have all these devices registered with extension 100 as an example, and then any incoming call will make all these phones to ring simultaneously. Another option that I wanted to share with you is about how customizable the UCM is. So you can customize, for example, the call routings, auto attend, and IVR. In the IVR, for example, you can upload any recordings. We provide options, super easy, that you can have or produce your nice professional recordings, and then you can upload it to the UCM, and then you can assign that recording to any particular destination, to an IVR, for example, music on hold, or even a ring group, for example. You can also customize your call queues, call forwarding, call retrieval, music on hold, transfer, and typical ring groups or hunt groups. So you have all these typical set of features that are PBX support. For conferencing, obviously, if you are using a Grandstream phone, you can do a three-way call, a three-way conference on the phone itself. But when you're using a Grandstream device, PBX, sorry, then you can do the three-way conferences on the PBX. So not only by having a three-way conversation, but you can increase that to what we call a conference bridge, where you can have up to 6 bridges. And within those bridges, you may have simultaneously up to 32 participants. And recently, and in the not too long ago, we added an option that you can have a conference call scheduler. So you can schedule conferences and then synchronize that with your Google Calendar. So your conferences are going to be always reminded by you through your Google Calendar option. And by the way, as of so far, all the options that I have mentioned before, they are included in the price, in the cost of the unit. So you don't need to buy extra licenses. You don't need to buy extra modules, but everything comes as is. So call recording is a good example. It comes with a unit. You can start recording your calls. You can store the calls or the recordings locally, as I said before, or you can push them out through the external media, or even through to a remote server. You can also access your recordings through the web interface. Just basically has a play button, and you can play it. For security, PBXs, obviously today, I mean, you need to have your IP PBX behind a firewall. Our UCM 6200 so comes with a router. It comes with some firewall rules, but if you have that PBX protected with a hardware firewall, then that's recommended. However, the unit still supports multiple options that you can protect the unit. For example, a firewall that is built in, typical blacklist, fail to ban, for example. Fail to ban is an application that is monitoring packages that are incoming to the UCM, suspicious packages, by the way. If you have your PBX, for example, connected directly to the public internet, then it's most likely the PBX is going to be attempt to be hacked. So you need to enable these options to secure your PBX. This is the call recording menu. From the web interface, you go to CDR, and then here you can see all your recordings. There's an option also that you can download your recordings, and then it's a CSV file that then you can export it to your reporting software, or maybe a billing software that is going to need that data to process the billing. I mentioned about the email forwarding. So incoming faxes, for example, or even voicemails. The UCM is email ready. You don't need to do anything. It's using a simple non-authenticated method called MTA. As soon as you create your extensions, you assign an email address to each extension. Then when that extension receives an email or receive a fax, the faxes are going to be converted into PDF. The voicemails are going to be converted into Wave format. and then they're going to be pushed out or sent via email to the email that you configure on that extension. And by the way, back to the email, the UCM also supports a client email server. So then you can configure client email client, sorry. So then you can configure it with your email server. And for backup, never lose any configuration. So you need to enable this option, highly recommended for any administrator. The UCM provide with the typical option that you can save your backups, either, again, locally or through a USB file, media, for example, or even you can download it through your web browser. So there are multiple ways that you can set up your backups. And we recently added an option that you can even create a schedule that the UCM is going to push the backups to your external media or even to an FTP server. Our UCM, again, all the models that we support, the UCM 6200 series and the 6510, comes with video ready to use. So if you have a Grandstream video phone, just plug it in and you don't need to do anything. If you have even a third-party IP phone or video phone, as long as they support the typical protocols, SIP and the H.264 codecs for audio, for video, then you should be able to place a video call from one extension to the other one. Now, if you want to be mobile, then it's better to download a free soft phone. Go to your Apple Store or maybe to your Google Play Store and download the Grandstream Wave. Grandstream Wave is a soft phone that will let you register your extension, so then you can receive your calls to that particular extension. So your cell phone is going to convert into a desktop phone. All the features that you have in a regular Grandstream desktop phone, you're going to have that in your cell phone. For example, by using Grandstream Wave, you can make a video call. You can use BLF, for example. You can see the status of other extensions by changing the color from green to red. You can also do a conference, and you can even register multiple lines into your soft phone. Not only one UCM, but up to 5 more PBXs. So you can have a 6 lines soft phone that we call Grandstream Wave. And of course, the UCM is compatible with any third-party soft phones available in the market. For example, Bria, Zoiper, or 3CX. Now, let me show you a little bit about the call features that are supported in the UCM. From basic features, we have IVR or out attendant. We have the CDR, call queues, callback, music on hold. As mentioned before, everything's configurable. It's super easy to manage. And we also, the UCM support advanced features like recording servers, like LDAP, for example. If you have your phone book, you can use that protocol to synchronize the phone book much quicker. TLS for security, FXO automatic detection in case you have lines that you have some noise in the line, for example, or the caller ID is not showing correctly. Sometimes your telco provider may not be providing the settings correctly. So either you find out what the settings are, and then you can plug in that information in the UCM, or the UCM has an option that we call it automatic detection. When you click that button, the UCM is going to automatically detect the best settings of the telco provider. And as I said before, either the basic features or the advanced features, they all come in one firmware. They are all supported by your PBX without any extra licensing fees. Recording server. So you can record locally. The UCM, depending on the model, they come with 2 gigs of flash. If you want to store your call recordings locally, you may have up to 500,000 minutes. Probably, if it's not too much, depending on your deployment, then I highly recommend to basically just plug in a USB drive that, as you know, you can gain up to 32 or 64 gigs of space. Even I've seen customers using the USB port to connect a NAS drive. With a NAS drive, then you don't have any limitations. You can gain, up to, terabytes of data. So in that way, you can use this little appliance, PBX appliance, to do a nice call recording installation. For the fax server, you can send, obviously, all the UCM, they come with, they support two FXS ports that you can connect a analog phone or a fax machine. So any incoming call, the fax server can detect if it's a fax, and then you have multiple destinations that you can send the fax to, either one of the FXS ports where you may have a fax machine connected, or probably can send it out to an extension that is registered with a Handyton or an ATA. That ATA may be in a different location, and that ATA may be having a fax machine connected to it. Or even just send it to the fax server. So the fax server is going to keep it, and then you configure it to, upon receiving faxes, send it to an email address. So you have multiple options. And now you can also have, we have an option that you can send faxes from your browser. As I explained before, you need to upload your PDF file and enter the phone number, and the UCM will convert it into regular fax. For the conference server, as mentioned before, depending on the model, so if you have a UCM 6202 or 04, then you can create up to 3 conference bridges. If you have 3 conference bridges, then in a single time, you can have up to 25 participants, okay? So either you can have these 25 participants in one bridge, or you may have different conferences going on at the same time within the 3 conference bridges that you have. So keep in mind that there's a limit of 25 participants. And then, of course, with the 6208 and 6510 also, by the way, you can have more conference bridges and you can have more participants, up to 32. In the conference IVR menu, when you join a conference, there's a sort of like a menu saying, welcome to the bridge, enter your name, for example. You can also, these settings are customizable. You can make a conference private. You can set up a ping number. So anyone joining that bridge, they will be prompted to enter a ping. As the administrator, from the web interface as an administrator, you can cancel a call, you can mute a participant, or you can even bridge that conference bridge. You can bridge it to a remote UCM that is also running another conference. So in that way, you can have multiple group of people joining within one audio stream. Because we're using Asterix as an open source PBX, obviously the UCM is a bring your own device equipment. It's compatible with any endpoint, in other words. So you can use not only a soft phone or a Grandstream soft phone or a Grandstream IP phone, you can also bring or register any third-party phone. And as I said before, some of the brands are Android, Bria, or Soiper. Any soft phone is compatible. As long as they support the SIP protocol, then we should be good. So protocol, the RFC 3261, that's the protocol that all the SIP phones must support in order to be compatible. This is very standard, and most of the third-party phones support or follow the guidelines. For security, let me just highlight some of the network security options that the UCM support. For example, in the network layer security, LLDP or 802.1x. So the UCM, you can configure it under this environment. For TLS and SRTP, you can encrypt the whole a conversation, or the voice package can be encrypted. And at the same time, when using TLS, you can encrypt the signaling. Remember, in voice over IP, there are two layers that are being used in any call. The first one is the signaling to identify one point endpoint to the other one. And then the second one is the signaling, which is the RTP. So then you can encrypt both of them, and the conversation is going to be 100% encrypted or secured. Firewall is embedded, so you don't need to just go to the network settings, turn on your firewall, and there are multiple rules that you can play, that you can enable. Static defense or dynamic defense is one example. Blacklist and whitelist, you can also whitelist or blacklist IP addresses, so you don't want remote servers to access your UCM, or you do want it in case you want to whitelist it. And the UCM is using an encryption algorithm. It's called IES 128. For applications, web browser by default is using HTTPS. You can also use HTTP MD5 zip digest algorithm. So basically, this is an option that we have available for you that you can enable if you need. And lastly, let me talk about the high availability devices. We launched not too long ago, probably about a few months ago, a new hardware that can be used for high availability. So you need to have two UCM 6510s, by the way, and you can have both UCM, one running as the master. Let me see if I have an example here. So then you can see at the bottom that you have two UCM, the master and the slave. Both are connected to this HA100, and then that device HA is basically pinging or checking the status of the master UCM. When the master is not reachable, obviously everything is going to be routed or fed back to the slave unit. Okay, both UCMs, the master and the slave, all the configuration is going to be synchronized. So when the calls are fell over to the slave unit, then everything is going to remain the same. So the second UCM is going to be like the master, because all the settings, all the configuration is going to be synchronized automatically. So in having that said, that's basically, I'm wrapping up the UCM presentation. I hope that you had a good feedback or a good understanding of our PBX. Grandstream is devoting a lot of effort in this PBX, and as always, we make the UCM easy to use, user-friendly. If you have any questions, Grandstream has a support or help desk support website, grandstream.com. You're gonna see the help desk option in the top right corner. Or if you have a specific question that you can direct to RRA VoIP, please write down the phone number and the email address that you can reach out someone at RRA so they can help you with any sales related or even technical related question. So let me turn it over to Danielle. Do we have any questions? So we're going to start the Q&A session.
Yes, it looks like we have a few questions, Ernesto. So I'm going to go ahead and start reading those to you. And please, if you haven't entered your question in yet and you'd like to ask something, please go in the questions part of the dashboard and type it in. It does look like we have about 15 minutes left, so we can answer those. And if we don't have enough, we'll wrap it up a little bit quicker. Our first question, and I can answer this one, can you share the presentation with us? And yes, we will be. We will be posting our webinar on demand, and we'll be sending you a follow-up email after this webinar within the next few days, and you'll get a recording of the entire webinar. We have another question for you, Ernesto. Can I use existing Polycom SIP phones with this? Is there a way to accommodate 24 FXO ports? Those are two questions together.
Okay, perfect. So as I said before, yes, any third-party phone, as long as they support SIP following the RFC 3261, then yes, this is a PBX that is running on an open source code, which we call it Asterix. So yes, as long as the Polycom is compatible with Asterix, which I'm sure they are, then yes, you can connect these phones to a Grandstream UCM. For the second question, if you want to add more FXO ports, Grandstream has a gateway. We call it GWN 4108. So keep an eye on that. You can check on 888 VoIP website. And we have two models, 4 ports and 8 ports. So if you want to accommodate more than what the UCM support, then you can add multiple gateways to accommodate 24 FXO lines. So keep an eye at GWN 4104 or 4108.
Okay. And also we have a question that says, how about Cisco and allowed phones?
Again, same answer. So third-party phones, they are welcome. The only thing is obviously for third-party phones, you need to manually configure them. The beauty of having a Grandstream PBX and Grandstream phone, that the whole solution is that they're going to be talking to each other. Provision Grandstream phones is going to be much easier. But yes, third-party phones are welcome as well.
Okay. And on the topic of talking about third-party phones, we have one more question. What limitations come when using third-party IP phones?
As I said before, provisioning them, it's not a limitation, let's say, but you know, we try to make things easier if you have the whole solution. But I don't know. I mean, at the end, the third-party phones, they're going to be working exactly the same as a Grandstream phone. If you have a whole solution, then we may add, by having a full solution, there are some settings, let's say, that are going to be automatically synchronized between the UCM and the Grandstream phone. As an example, call park, for example. Call park, you don't need to configure it. When the UCM detects that this is a Grandstream phone and vice versa, then the call park button is going to be automatically configured. But if you have a third-party phone, then that auto detection is not going to happen, but you can still configure it manually.
All right, the next question, can we have SPC functions with Grandstream?
SPC function? Oh, sure.
SPC function.
Is that, can you spell it for me? SPC? SPC? I don't know, what is that? Let me check the question. Probably we can.
The next question.
Yeah.
I can get more information. Okay, perfect. We'll go to the next question then. Can you speak to the basic concept of programming a UCM 6208 with a Sonome PA1 to interface to existing overhead paging speaker systems?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely. That's a good question. So a lot of customers, they have a PA system already in place. So they may have a customer that they have a existing PA system already. So when you want to present a new IP PBX, obviously you would like to keep the same PA system. So in order to accommodate that existing PA system into the UCM or the Grandstream solution, you have multiple ways of doing it. Number one, depending on what type of PA system they're using. So you can accommodate that through the FXS port of the same UCM, okay? You can, sometimes the PA system is not in the same room as where the UCM is installed, then you need to have a ATA, we call it handy-tone. For example, check on our website, HT801. That's a one-port FXS ATA. So then you can install that device right next to the PA system, and in that way you can interconnect the PA system into the Grandstream solution. And there are other ways. That's what I was saying, that the second way is once you identify the PA system, some of them are using a zip client already, so you don't need to have a physical connection. So I've seen people like Cyber Data, for example, that they have digital PA systems already in place. If that is the case, then you treat that as a third-party phone, create an extension on the UCM, and register that PA system with that particular extension number.
All right, we're going to go back to the last question, Ernesto. It was, can we have session border controller functions with Grandstream?
Oh, SBC, sorry about that.
I know. I think sounded like I said something else. Sorry.
There's so many acronyms today. So yeah, definitely. SBC is sort of like a firewall that you can put in between the UCM and your modem. And yes, there are multiple people doing that. Grandstream is not in that business, but I've seen a lot of customers using their existing SBCs to protect the PBX. And yes, any brand should be compatible with the type of PBX that we have, that we make.
Okay. How can Grandstream's video conference interact with the UCM 6200? As a communication video phone terminal?
We're doing the mixing internally. So if you have a video phone and okay, so they're talking about video conference and the UCM conference bridge. Is that right?
The question was just asked as read.
Uh-huh. Okay, anyhow, I think I got the idea. So basically, there are many ways of doing it. As a video conference, Grandstream has a video conference device. We call it a GVC 3200. If you're doing a video conference with that particular device, that device comes with an MCU. So in the whole unit is doing the bridge for you. You can have up to 9 video streams within the same device. So you can register that GVC with the Grandstream UCM, and then you can have all these other, let's say 8 video phones calling the extension of that GVC. But again, the video conference bridging or video mixing is done at the GVC. So if you don't have a Grandstream video conference phone, like the GVC, then the UCM doesn't support video mixing. The UCM is not doing any video conference. You need to have a small Grandstream video phone, for example, the GXV 3275, which can bridge up to 3 video streams. But if you want to do audio conferences, then yeah, definitely the audio mixing is done at the UCM.
All right, the next question, can I also add more FXS ports, maybe up to 48?
Yep, one of the models that we manufacture, we call it Gateways or FXS Gateway, GXW 4200. We have different models from 14 ports all the way up to 48 ports. So by adding one of these gateways to the UCM, then you can add up to 48 FXS ports. Typical installation, Daniel, hotels, call centers. Sometimes the customer, they prefer to keep their analog phones, and by having this gateway, then you can connect this up to 48 analog phones into an IP solution like the UCM. And of course, you can install multiple gateways, so you can multiply that times, multiple devices. So the only thing you need to keep in mind is the limitation of the extensions supported on the UCM, that, as I showed you before, is up to 800 extensions.
Can the phones be provisioned remotely?
No, really. For security, I mean, of course, you can provision it manually, but the zero config that I show you, that happens only as long as the phones are within the same network.
Okay. What is the likely cause of audio delay on incoming calls via POS lines on the UCM PBX? No delay on extension to extension calls.
Mm-hmm. What would be that's a good question that you can submit through our help desk. But briefly, I can mention that I can say that when extension to extension is digital all the way, there's no encoder involved except on the phones itself, right? But if the call is coming through an analog trunk, like an FXO line, for example, then if you notice some delay, that could be due to a processing time, but sometimes the delay is so small that you're not able to tell unless you have an extension to extension call versus extension through PSTN line call. There are mechanisms supported by the UCM that you can overcome this type of delays. Remember when I talk about the auto detection? So the UCM has a FXO auto detection option that you can make the UCM more compatible with your pot lines to avoid this type of delays. And again, if you wanted to expand more, if you have a specific case that you wanted to let us know, feel free to reach out to 888 Tech Support or to Grandstream Help Desk.
All right. Does the UCM support any hotel module for check-in, check-out purposes?
Yes. Again, I'm sorry that the purpose of the UCM presentation today was a little more basic. Keep an eye on 888's website. Go to grandstream.com website also, and you're gonna see all the webinars that we make, that we do. Almost every other week, we have a different webinar, sometimes a little more advanced, sometimes a little more towards these specific solutions. So to answer that question, yes, we support PMS, which is a module, no license, by the way, it's included in the UCM, that you can connect your UCM with hotel softwares. We support a couple of middlewares, Edge Mobile and MyTel. If you don't have these two systems, then you don't gain 100% of the features, but you can still accommodate some other options like wake up call, for example, and minibar. So these two options are available if you don't have a middleware that supports Edge Mobile or MyTel.
All right, we have a few more minutes, so we're going to answer a few more questions. What we do not get to, we will try to answer in a PDF document that we will also be sending you in that follow-up email with the on-demand webinar. So we'll probably have time to answer about 2 more questions. I have one here that says, when using the auto detect function on POTS lines, does the UCM store the results detected for each line?
Good question. We do the testing in a line-by-line basis. So when you do a test, make sure that you tested one line only. Typically, I mean, if you have, for example, a 6208 with 8 FXO lines, then typically most of the 8 lines are coming from the same phone provider. But I've seen cases where you may have 4 lines coming from one provider and the other 2 lines coming from another provider, and the other 2 lines coming from an ATA, for example, that you have service with a SIP provider. So if that is the case, then do the test in a provider basis. So if you have 4 lines dedicated to one provider, then do the test within 4 lines. The results are going to be applied to these 4 lines, and then do the same test with the other lines. So when you configure the analog trunks, you're going to see what I'm talking about. You're going to see that you can create different trunks. Even that you have 8 FXO lines, you can group some of them to one trunk and other lines to other trunk. And then the test, the auto detection, is done per trunk basis.
All right, we have time for one more question. Let's see which one we have here. Do you have T1 E1 cards supported in the same device, or we have to use necessary gateways?
The UCM 6510, that model supports 1 T1 port, so you can use that model. I mean, you can always buy another gateway, a T1 gateway, for example. That patent, for example, they're doing a good job, and you can configure or add that gateway as a trunk into the UCM. But yes, UCM 6510, that's the one that supports 1 T1 port.
Perfect. So we have only 30 seconds left. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending today. If you have any questions, you can give us a call at 888-864-7786, or you can email us at sales@888-VoIP, and you can be on the lookout for a follow-up email coming to you from 888-VoIP. I hope you'll have a great day, and thank you again for joining us.
Thank you very much. Have a good day.